Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We've got another wonderful show for you coming up today, and it feels kind of weird. I got to let you know that Treva is on vacation today, so she's not going to be in the chat room. I will try to keep an eye on the chat room the best that I can, but anyway, Treva, we hope you're enjoying your day off, and we look forward to having you back again here next week on the Just Bernard Show. With that, I wanted to share with everybody and give you a really big thank you. As many of you know, in the last, when was it? Back in February. As you know, I got started with the Global Illumination Council back in 2007, I believe, and we kind of let that project go to the side, and we dissolved it. Anyway, I went solo, so it kind of feels weird, and it was a very scary thing to go solo. You know, do BernardAlvarez.com and do everything under my name, and switch all the accounts and everything over to me. And and what I mean is like the websites and pages, and it was a very, very scary thing, but I've got to tell you, you guys have been so great. You have been so supportive, and I just can't believe the support that we're getting. I'm astounded at some of these numbers that I'm seeing. I mean, our Facebook page alone, we've gotten like 20,000 new likes over the last 2 months. I think we're up to like 320,000 people on our Facebook page. The YouTube channel is about to hit like 28 million viewers. And again, you know, it's a scary thing going out solo. You know, now I know how Diana Ross felt when she left the Supremes. But you guys have been really great, and I just really wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for supporting the work that I am doing. You are being very helpful. You're helping me fund the production aspects of everything that we're doing, and it's just been such an honor to be able to continue to work in service to humanity and try to get this really important information out. And speaking of important information, I have Dr. Wil Spencer is joining me live today. He's also a host here on Revolution Radio, but today he's going to be switching sides and going to be taking the questions versus asking them or talking about them. For those of you that may not know about Dr. Wil Spencer, he has been on this show several times in the past. It's probably been about a year or so since he's been on my program. He is a naturopath. He's an author and a researcher, an advocate for nature. His work extends into multiple areas of investigative research and education regarding human and environmental health relative to identifying and restoring the degraded conditions of natural homeostasis, most often due to industrialization and the misunderstanding of the importance of microorganisms. Anyway, to share more information with us, I'd like to welcome Dr. Wil Spencer back to the show. Hi, Wil. How are you today?
Afternoon, Bernard. Thank you for asking me to be on.
It's a pleasure, and I'm glad you were able to make it in such short notice. I appreciate you agreeing to come on.
Yeah, it's a great time. I really enjoy your show.
Thank you. Wil, for those of us, and I kind of want to approach our talk today like we're talking to people that have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, kind of make it a little bit educational. Because even I have get confused the difference between homeopathy and naturopathy. What is a naturopath? What is it that you do?
Well, we use natural, non-toxic means to help people get rid of disease and illness. That's what we do. We do use some homeopathy. In that process, homeopathy is, my view anyhow, they're infusing frequencies or the essence of, for instance, like Bach flower. If you've heard of Bach flower remedies, they're actually taking the essence or the frequency of the plant and putting it into suspension of a liquid, and then you're using that as medicine. So we do use some of that, but I just like the naturopathy aspect of it because we can use so much more. We use herbs, we use microorganisms, probiotics, living natural organisms from the earth, minerals from the earth, amino acids, different compounds from the earth. That's really what we do. It falls under that naturopath topic.
I see. So it's kind of like, well, homeopathy plus would be a good way for me to look at it, right?
Right. Correct.
Very cool. Very cool. And now, of course, you have your own special way of looking at whole body health and how you can attain balance or restore balance. I myself, I do energy healing, and we believe it is our theory or our hypothesis that any illness is due to some type of imbalance within the body, and that we're trying to restore that natural balance. Is that pretty much the same thing that you're doing using herbs and natural essences?
Right. Yeah, I have a lot of training in the energy medicine type of arena. And what we're looking at, though, we're not only looking at the energy field, but the slower vibrating, the denser energy field is actually our biology. And so I have pretty much my own unique take on that whole viewpoint, because energy is definitely part of it. But we live in my friend Bob calls it a meat suit. we live in a meat suit that is stuck here in third dimension and that has tangible, realistic, earth-based properties, not just, and it's driven by energy. So it's like the car, looking at the car and the gas, if you will. So there's two different components here, and I think my own personal opinion is people don't see the bigger picture here. I mean, because I've studied a lot of energy, 14, 15 different energy modalities over the years, but we all come back to the slower vibration that we live in, the actual tangible body.
Right, exactly. I mean, you could be getting all the energy healing in the world, and if you're still putting garbage into your body, you're going to disrupt the natural system.
Right.
Absolutely, that makes complete sense to me. We have to take care of the whole spectrum of it. And as I'm looking at your website, because I love how much information you have on your website. By the way, his website is bodyelectrician.com. And I know I probably spoke to you a little bit about it in the past, but I'm interested in the work that you're doing in the Vibrant Health program. What was it? What were the reasons why you felt you needed to create it? What motivated you to create it? And what is it?
Well, that has several components. So we're looking at mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit, if you will. So it's not only the physical body, but we're also looking at the emotionals and the energy of things as well. And what we found is we distilled it down to basically 3 or 4 main things. We're living in a malnutrition body. Our environment that we live in internally as well as externally is definitely polluted. And we have definitely negative emotional programming that goes back in society for generations. And so we're restoring this natural balance inside the body, because it really kind of ties into the energy side of things. Because, for instance, a worn out guitar string, you can tune it and then you play it and then it goes out of tune right away, and then you have to tune it. It won't like fix itself. Well,
right.
We're living in bodies that are worn out. So I do energy medicine, and there's no really sustainability there because our bodies, our guitar string is wore out, and the tools aren't there to like fix the mechanism, the string. Our bodies are able to fix it if you can put in what's needed to fix it, to hold the energy frequencies. So we're linking that energy medicine with the physical in that regard.
I see. I like that. And for a client that is coming to you for the first time, I know I've heard about several other different types of therapies that you do, but what would be the first thing that you would ask a client to do to get started in something like this?
Well, what's kind of transformed what we do over the last few years is this ability to scan people with a bit of technology, and so that's what's making us a bit available to so many people all over the planet. You don't have to come to us anymore. We actually have these scanning devices that we mail all over the planet, and we're looking for different we have like over 18,000 potential things we're looking for: viruses, bacteria, pathogens of all different kinds, parasites, hormonal imbalances, heavy metals, petrochemicals. We can see into the sinus cavities, the vertebrae, your teeth, your central nervous system, all these different organs and glands that make us up, all based on frequency. Looking at from the energy spectrum, everything has its own harmonic resonance, or it's like an electronic fingerprint, if you will, that's unique for say, Borrelia or Bortonella versus HIV or trichtophyton or some of these other microorganisms. Everything has a unique signature, energy signature, and that's what we're looking for. No matter if it's a mineral, a heavy metal, an amino acid, or whatever. And that's really been transforming what we're doing. Taking like our Vibrant Health program that was 75-80% success right up into the high 90s. If you follow the protocol that the scan produces, boom, your body is going to respond into health.
Wow, that's amazing. And so what you're saying is that does it scan? Can it also scan, like, let's say if our heart frequency is off or any of our organs, or is it strictly for chemicals? Oh, okay.
No. For body organs, actually, we're able to look at the energy systems of the body, the different meridians and acupuncture points and all the different chakras, as well as we're able to pick up negative emotional programming conflict. Because in 1999, Candace Peirce came out and said that our body is our subconscious mind, and that subconscious mind holds our programs that we operate our daily life from. It's like we're living in like a supercomputer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely.
And so we're scanning the body for the conflict, these emotional conflicts. Like, for instance, what comes up a lot of times is we're able to see a conflict with a statement or a program like, I love myself unconditionally. So if you have conflict with that, so that what's really the program that's held in your body is, I don't love myself unconditionally. So no matter what you do, supplemental-wise, spiritual-wise, trying to help yourself to become healthier and more vibrant, yours going to be a sabotage if you don't address that program. It's kind of like a virus in the machine on your computer. No matter what you do, there's going to be hiccups and sabotage taking place. And until you take the conflict away from I don't love myself and make it into I love myself unconditionally, that's where the miracles happen. When you can reverse that, and that is really what's excelled the whole program that we do, is because we're addressing these emotional conflicts. And when the subconscious mind, our body, and our conscious mind in our head are aligned, miracles happen. Health is like right there.
Yeah, it reminds me of, a good example. I'm sure this was many years ago before things got really industrialized, but my grandfather lived to be 99 years old, and he ate whatever he wanted. He smoked cigars every day. He drank rum every day, but he did not have any stress. He was always happy. He just exuded vitality, even though he basically was somewhat unhealthy. And I asked myself, how could that be? And as I get older and I learn more about this, especially when we're talking about energy, he seemed to just exude good feelings, good no major distress, and I guess that's kind of, I'm not saying that's what you're saying, don't drink and smoke, but stress would have a factor on the longevity of our life and the quality of our life. Isn't that right?
It's huge. I've learned so much dealing with older clients. I've had some clients in their 90s, and this one fellow in particular, 92 years old, really nothing wrong. And just like you said, your grandfather, I mean, did whatever pretty much he wanted. Pretty much didn't really matter, but he loved his life. He enjoyed every minute of his life. And for him, it worked up until that point in time when he started getting some illnesses, which I contributed to some of this genetically modified crap that's in our environment. But up until that time, I believe that his perception of life, he enjoyed his life. He was like, that was everything. And that alone can overcome and negate so much abuse to our body, like crappy food and some of the pollution in our environment and so forth. Just having that perception of life. And most people don't have that nowadays at all.
No, they don't. And unfortunately, we see a majority of people that are constantly stressed, and I call it the reactive life. They're like pinballs bouncing back and forth, from one reaction to another, and allowing ourselves to get stressed out. And that can't be good for our health.
I don't think so. I think they're at the effect of their life rather than creating their life. So that's like that pinball that's just getting banged around.
Yeah.
Instead of like some of these older fellows that I've been around and gals, that they just love their life. They live their life. They're not like at the effect of it.
Absolutely. Now, how much, if any, I know we always talk about, a lot of people talk about, like a good example, I had brought up this idea about my grandfather and being happy and healthy, and somebody said, oh, well, that's just genetics. How much does genetics play into this? And I'm assuming it has to do a little bit with it, but how much of it is a cause for illness?
If you're looking at straight genetics, I'm pretty well aligned with Bruce Lipton on that. It's like very little. Our genes express moment to moment. You can turn them off just by changing your attitude. You can turn them on by changing your attitude. Your perception of your environment has a great deal to do with genetic expression on the cellular level. I mean, you're coming to this life born into the body, and there's genetic things that pass through to some extent, like we know Down syndromes and certain things like that. But beyond that, which is a minuscule amount of the population, but beyond that, you can alter your gene expression so easily. And that's what people don't understand, the gene manipulation. I mean, us as farmers, because my family's been farming for generations, we knew breeding different types of animals together, like different goat breeds or different cattle breeds. I mean, my father was known for some of his genetics that he had in his cattle herd. Well, it's not that easy to do natural type selection, genetic modification, but these laboratory genetic modifications, now eating the food and the stuff in the medicines and from the allopathic medical system and the stuff like that is more damaging than anything.
So this whole idea that, and I don't want to get too controversial as far as some people getting a little crazy with their bodies, worrying about getting cancer, but we're being told, especially by the media, the mainstream media, the corporate media, and I guess this is coming from the allopathic medicinal world, that oh well, if you have the gene for cancer, one day it's just going to click in, or if you have the gene for I don't know, hair loss or whatever it is, it's inevitable. We're being told it's inevitable. And what you're saying is that we can change that to some extent by our attitude and our way of thinking and living.
To some extent, yeah. I've had people come to us with this breast cancer thing, and that's kind of like in my world here is a big trigger. I've just had a couple handfuls of people come to us all with cancer, and they've all been scanned, and we've got every cancer frequency that there is. We're even able to see if there's any new mutations taking place, and not one of them in the last 5 people that I'm aware of have had actual cancer. It's always been some pathogen. My understanding and viewpoint of this is like the BRA2 gene or whatever they're looking for when they're pulling blood or taking biopsies of lymphatic nodes. When they're doing their allopathic testings, they're looking for things like that particular gene. So, but the people don't get that. When you look over here, they teach us this in microbiology, that bacteria can alter our gene expression, or microorganisms in general. Having an infection can alter your gene expression on that cellular level. So what we're looking for is not only the cancer, but we're looking for the markers or the pathogens or the parasites or the blood chemistry. And so I live in a different world than most people, because we're able to see the difference between real cancer and the pathogens. And everybody that's coming to us with these cancer diagnoses is all coming to us with massive amounts of infections and no cancer. And a few years ago, it was explained to me by an oncologist in an interview that I had with her, that she was telling me that's exactly right. They're able to give cancer diagnosis by just finding and identifying and looking at colony forms, CFUs of the infection. So they're giving you a cancer diagnosis without actually proving that you actually have cancerous cells based on infections. And so this whole idea is a fear-based system. They know you're going to end up with cancer eventually if you have an infection. It's inevitable. That's just the way the body works. And we're able to see, because we're looking for thousands of different infections as well as the cancer at the same time. And so just to be real clear about the gene expression. So they're coming to us with this breast cancer. They're looking for the BRA2 or whatever it is, gene expression. But we know now, this is from cellular biology, that infections cause that particular gene to be expressed. So they're looking for a marker based on the infection. So hopefully that's fairly clear. In my mind, it's clear. Yeah. But you get rid of the infection, that gene expression goes away as well. So then you see what I mean? So it's all basically about the identification of the infection in my world, because you deal with the infection, and then this whole cancer idea is pretty much the gene expression idea goes, gene determinism, I guess is what it's called, where the BRA2 gene goes away. It unexpresses. So this is where my reality over here is quite a bit different than most of your AMA, the whole AMA right. reality about cancer.
And I forgot if it was a guest that was on my show. Maybe it was you, or if I read it somewhere. But some alternative healers are blaming cancer on a type of mold, perhaps, or maybe a type of cancer as a mold. What do you know anything about that, or have you heard anything to that?
Oh yeah, there's a whole theory about cancer is fungus, or fungus causes cancer. This goes back to the infection, the microorganism again. So, and in the allopathic medicine, I got my hands on a diagnostic book. It's in the higher academic medical world, where they're actually giving you the strains of microorganisms for the different kinds of cancer. And so they're collapsing the concepts, and the everyday common people out on the street, that you say the word cancer, and most people they'll go into panic mode because of just the energy and just the perception of cancer itself is such a bad thing, when cancer really in my world is just the end of a healing process, if it's actually true cancer, because we're identifying the infection separate from the actual cancer.
And to my understanding, and actually for my in my world, as you're saying, I believe that at the moment that you start embracing the disease and start living the disease, it becomes you. You become the disease. You're perpetuating and promoting it. So what you're saying is to look at it as an opportunity to heal, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. When you listen to people talk, my diabetes, my breast cancer, my colon, whatever, they're like identifying themselves as the disease or with the disease. And when your body responds, Our subconscious mind is like a literal download machine. If you say that's my diabetes, well, here you go.
Yeah.
You can create disease just by claiming it totally in the energy realm, and then soon it'll manifest in the physical realm.
I have a meme that I put out a lot, and it says, "Words are energy. That's why they call it spelling. Watch what you say."
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And we're saying it, and it becomes a mantra. And the same seems to go, especially in today's. We don't have time yet because we're going to have a commercial in a couple of minutes to get into this, but into the whole idea of depression. I mean, what's the percentage now of people that are taking antidepressants in the United States?
It's huge.
It's enormous. And now they're adding antidepressants to help the antidepressant. You know, if your antidepressant isn't working, take this one also, you know.
It's nuts. I mean, we see so many people on 5, 6, 7, 8 different pharmaceutical drugs just to pull them up out of depression. That's insane.
And we're not even looking at the cause of it. You know, they're treating the symptom, but they're not saying, well, maybe there's something wrong with our society, or, you know, maybe there's something wrong with our system that is causing everyone to feel this way.
Right.
And it's just completely being overlooked. And meanwhile, the pharmaceutical companies are making out like bandits.
Right. There's so many contributing factors to the depression thing, because that's an endocrine system issue to some extent, and there's just too many contributing factors. It's like a bicycle with many spokes.
Now, I don't know how much experience you have, and we've only got about another minute, but what's real depression versus, you know, fake depression? I understand people have a crisis. I understand, you know, maybe you lost a loved one, or you got a divorce and you're going through a crisis. But I mean, as a young person, I went through depression, but it was from, you know, partying too much, you know, as a 20-year-old. It was like, oh, y'all, yeah, I did ecstasy the night before. Of course I'm depressed today. But
well, for instance, there's endocrine system disruptors and pesticides and pharmaceutical drugs, and that just permeates our environment, not just the food, but just our environment. So
we're on a break. We're having a break right now, but we're going to continue this, because I'd like to hear more about that when we return with Dr. Wil Spencer. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We're having a talk today with Dr. Wil Spencer. But before we get back into our discussion, I just wanted to mention to everybody, I will be starting a new program this weekend. Is going to be the first quote-unquote episode. I've been asked by many people to start doing a live video program. I was going to do live interviews, but I'm finding that I've decided to go with something called vignettes. I don't know if you've seen it. It seems to be the latest craze. You know, like 7-minute, you know, shows on YouTube. I guess because everyone's got short attention span, you know, whatever, ADD. But it is going to be a short, you know, 7 to 8 minute a week program. And I'll be answering a lot of your questions. I get lots and lots and lots of questions from many of you from all over the world, and I really enjoy that. Anyway, the show is called Activate, and it's going to, like I said, it will be out. The first episode should be available this Sunday, and you can find out more about Activate on my website at bernardalvarez.com. And I'll even let you know what I'm going to be talking about this week for the first episode. I had a very interesting question from one of the listeners, or one of the YouTube people or Facebook people. Somebody said, "How do I know if I've awakened?" And I was like, well, how did I know when I was awakened? You know, and there's so many different levels of the awakening. So that's going to be the first episode. How do we know that we're awake? And again, that'll be out this Sunday. You can find out more at bernardalvarez.com, and there's a big old picture for the Activate show there. And you can click on that, and you can subscribe and get the shows every Sunday. Anyway, let me welcome Dr. Wil Spencer back to the show. Wil, before we went on the break, we were just starting to get into depression. You were going to talk a little bit of how our diets and the foods that we're ingesting can affect that. Now, without having to state the obvious, if you're doing drugs, yeah, you're going to be depressed, or if you're having a crisis in your life, yeah, you're going to be depressed. But what are some of the environmental and or nutritional factors that we should be on the lookout for when it comes to depression?
Well, I have you got your pesticides. Actually, a lot of if you do an elemental search from pesticides to pharmaceutical drugs, a lot of them, there's a lot of crossover, and it really messes with the endocrine system. So there's a lot of pharmaceutical drugs. If you just look at the side effects, I mean, you got potential depression.
Yeah.
Pesticides. I come from agriculture, and my father was a large farmer, and that was one of my problems growing up. He was a chemical farmer, 3,000 acres, and he sprayed with airplanes, and helicopters. And I grew up. I hated my life when I was a kid. I did not really, for the most part, I was like depressed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing. Pesticides. Another thing is just your family dynamic. I mean, I grew up, my parents never got along. I mean, it seemed that way. There was like always tension and stress in the house, always. And as a kid growing up in that can lead to depression. Just because if you view your life as a kid as being a threat all the time, very unstable, emotionally unstable, that can lead to depression. That to me is the biggie. Just the perception of living a life as being victimized constantly. That's really hard on our bodies.
So, and then this becomes a habit. It gets stuck in our subconscious mind, and we turn to adults that still have this habit of thinking this is the way our life is.
Sure. I mean, we hear adults even today, like 50, 60 years old, 40 years old, that you can listen to, if you really can key into what they're saying and how they're saying it, is like they live in just like a victim state, or they're almost looking for the negative all the time. It's like they can't see past that. It's like they're just so used to living as a victim or being victimized. There's another word, it's called living in a disempowering context. Mm-hmm. Like you're just totally at the effect of everything. And that alone is extremely damaging to us physically, health-wise.
Yes.
And in my opinion, that's the hardest thing to get over. The body will change relatively easy. It's just idea of altering our perception and getting out of that disempowering context to get into an empowering, or to be a manifester rather than a victim.
Absolutely. And
that's huge.
And it goes right into that whole thing we were talking about when we begin to embrace the disease. And I find that you're talking about the people who live disempowered lives. I see them in my everyday life, and it does lead to disease and, all these other physical breakdowns within their body, whether it be certain allergies, whether it be fibromyalgia, whether it be stomach issues, or even cancers,
Right. I think the most, and I've been at this for like 20 years of my life, just working on just me personally, getting to the bottom of what makes Wil tick and what's going. And I'm telling you, this is like a never-ending layer upon layer onion. It's like you never get to the center. So I've pretty much given up trying to get to fix it, as in, that I'm ever going to be like something someday. I'm more like Pilgrim's Progress, the book, where it's really just the day after day journey that makes everything. Because I still have areas in my life where I'm just coming to like grasp after like 20 years of like aggressively looking at myself, going, oh, wow, there it is again. I have a very disempowerment wrapped around this particular issue. And this stems back all the way back to when I was 6.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't look at myself any different than the clients. I learn more from the clients that we have than I ever did in any kind of academic, type of setting. Just the really hands-on dealing with people is so therapeutic and educational for me. To helps me, and then I can language it to other people. Because really, I'm just a couple of years ahead of somebody else, really, if you want to look at it on the journey type thing. It's just I discovered this a little bit earlier than some, and just sharing. That's really all we're doing, is just sharing what we're learning here.
Isn't that the truth? That's been my disclaimer from the beginning. It's like, I'm just going through this journey. I'm letting you know what I'm experiencing.
Yep. And that's how we are so community-orientated beings. We depend on community so much, and then we live in a society that keeps us so isolated. I mean, just look at the technology today. I was in a store not too long ago, a restaurant, and there was like a bunch of young people in this little store, and nobody was talking, but everyone was sitting with their face in their phone.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all isolated. You got 30 people here. Nobody's communicating with each other. And I see the isolation at the root of the depression more than anything, or the perception of isolation. And it's like done to us, unconscious. Like 20 years ago, we didn't have this kind of a problem because we didn't have the technology.
Absolutely. Now, and the sad part is maybe they were talking to each other. They were just texting to each other right next to each other.
Yeah, right.
And I've seen that. I was like, really? You're in the same room and you're texting to each other? Or do you really need to do that?
Right.
But in the last, let's say, health-wise, what have you noticed, or I don't even know how long you've been doing this work, but in the time that you've been doing this work, what are some of the greatest obstacles that you've seen for us to live healthy, whether it be a healthy diet? Is it GMOs? Is it the environment? Is it the petrochemicals? What seems to have become a greater issue over the last several years, or however long you've been doing this? I mean, I recently read the somebody posted a Facebook post, the ingredients of Infamil. And I was like, what? High fructose corn syrup? And you're going to give that to a baby? That's baby formula nowadays. I remember when baby formula was like, powdered milk or whatever it was. Right. Has it gotten that much more aggressive, I guess? What is that the biggest problem, the ingredients, what they're adding?
Well, that comes into play. That really does come into play. I say the biggest thing that is the microorganism population explosion. The infections are nuts. Doesn't matter what kind of illness or what you have going on. There's a few things that are always in the mix, and that is some kind of infection, whether it's viral, bacterial, or fungal, or even some parasitic infections. We're seeing a rise on them. Spring and fall are the worst. We're able to monitor now, tracking. We've been using the scanning technology for like 5 years. In the last 3, it's really been pretty much taken over what we're doing. And then we're just looking at the trends. Spring and fall have been much more active with the microorganisms coming out of winter and going into winter. That shifting of seasons is we're noticing a much more increase in infections. And the food, or what people call food, or what people call healthy food, I have my own version of that. And there again, I have to have an apology. Our websites have moved, and a lot of the information still not back up and fully functioning. It will be soon. We have a tab on there called The Healthy Diet. And that's kind of our simple rules, 5 simple rules basically. And that has everything to do with the infections in my world. Because how you're feeding yourself has a direct translation on the size of the infections that you have. Because the microorganisms and the pathogens that are in us and on us at all times, they're just there in response to our state of being. You cannot have, in a healthy, vibrant body, you cannot have infections, like out of balance pathogenic infections. Just doesn't work. Otherwise, you wouldn't be vibrantly healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than a plant in the ground. We have pests and plagues like blights and potato bugs and things like that, only because the plant is unhealthy. And we're no different. And this is my opinion, very strong in this opinion too, is if people are vibrantly healthy, and that's our tagline, is vibrant health is the remedy for all disease. If you're vibrantly healthy, you don't have infections. So our view on it is, if you're eating things that are going to be feeding you the biology and not the infections or not the microorganisms, that's really paramount. And there's the main thing that is like at the crutch of all of this, the pinnacle here is, in my opinion, grains, nuts, seeds. For the biggest part, they're not food for humans. That's all pathogen food in any way. I don't care if you're soaking them and eating them sprouted to some extent. Grains, nuts, and seeds and anything made from them, that's pathogen food. It raises your glucose level. It harms your digestive tract. It feeds the pathogens, because pathogens love, especially fungus and bacteria, love carbohydrates. Anything that raises your blood sugar is like feeding the infections. And so just that alone, for me, it was really difficult for me 20 years ago to get my head wrapped around this whole thing, this whole concept, because at that time I was farming and I had my own flour mill and I was selling bread.
Right.
And I was selling noodles and pasta, and that was like most of my income at that particular point in time. And so I quit. I gave it a 30-day trial. I thought, okay, so I'm going to quit eating it. And I'll tell you what, my allergies, almost all of them went away immediately. My constipation just about went away. At the time, my ex-wife's hormonal problem pretty much vanished. My children's ADD disappeared. Their constipation disappeared. And the weight just fell off. I mean, just making that change for 30 days, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to really look at this now, because this is impacting my family.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be impacting everybody else. And so that led me down that whole path about, okay, so what about the grains, the nuts, and the seeds? And then my investigation has down that path has opened my eyes to the fraud that we're being told coming out of academic science, wrapped around eating these items.
Oh, yeah. Whole grain, fiber. But they don't explain the difference between soluble and insoluble fiber.
Right, exactly. We need soluble, which means digestible. Insoluble means not digestible. And so just that whole fiber issue, if people would just, get their head wrapped around, there's two different kinds.
Right. Now, you just gave me an aha moment. I was reading just a headline. I didn't bother to read the whole article because I was like, oh, here we go again. Somebody had posted an article about how raw foods are bad for your digestive tract because you can't digest them. And I'm like, okay, now this is just another fear-mongering, article. But what you're saying is, if the raw food is insoluble fiber, then of course it's not going to be good for you.
Well, exactly. But the grain, the phytochemicals that are in grains, nuts, and seeds actually shut off your enzyme production. So you can't eat raw really anymore. We're seeing people that can only eat cooked food because eating raw food makes them extremely ill.
Yeah.
And so they've got a damaged system. So that article, just listening to the title of the article, I'd never read it or anything, but just listening to the title is partly correct.
Yeah.
Because we're eating things that damage our system, that we can't eat raw food anymore. And I'm all about raw food, but certain things you shouldn't be eating, and grains, nuts, and seeds are one of them.
Wow. And as far as like even people that aren't, let's say the average American or even the average, world citizen, whoever's listening to the show here, a majority of us just go day to day. I just went to the grocery store before I went to did this radio show, and we're it's just amazing the advertising and whatnot. And then of course, you have the sale and buy this 2 for 1 or whatnot, and of course it's all prepackaged, and environmentally destructive food. But what are some of your suggestions for the everyday person, even even if you can't afford to go to Whole Foods, or well, that really doesn't even matter anymore either. But even if you can't
Right.
afford the good stuff, what's the best way for us to eat healthy and not succumb to the tricks and the colors and the sales? Beside reading reading the labels, of course. But
Right.
you have
Well,
any?
stick to the perimeter of the grocery store for the most part if you go into a store, because everything that's in that shelf, in the middle of the store on the shelves, is preserved. There's something
Mm,
in there to cause it to be preserved. Okay,
mm,
fresh. You're looking at fruits, vegetables, and animal products. Those are the three areas for me that we see so much benefit to consuming. I mean, before refrigeration, there was different methods of storing food, but you got to really look at, we haven't really evolved physically. Our bodies have not evolved much, hardly at all, over the last 20,000 years.
right, right.
Okay, and industrial technology has been around a couple of hundred years, a few hundred, whatever. So if you just look at the scale, we have not evolved in the direction that technology has. Our bodies have not evolved into this technology advanced type of food system that we live. It's all about money. It's all about storage, shipping, commodity. It's all about the dollar. It has really nothing to do with physical health. And when people really get that, the old ways, and I've spent years looking back, and I've talked to anthropologists that have studied back 30, 40,000 years, and we today, 2015, have not evolved to live in this kind of a lifestyle very well at all.
Obviously, we haven't. We've got disease, we've got obesity, we got depression, we've got
Right.
so many things that are becoming an epidemic now.
Right. And so I've spent a lot of time looking at, okay, so how did people live way back when? Okay, I mean, in my family, I've talked to a lot of the old timers in my family that have been farmers. And for instance, I have a second cousin that he was farming pigs and dairy, and he raised mink and other animals. And I asked him, I said, he had this big pot in the corner of the one pig house, the feeder pig house. But there wasn't in the others, in the breeding stock building. It wasn't in there. I'm like, what's that for? Why are you feeding these pigs this and not the breeding pigs? And he goes, well, that's simple. He says, you never feed grain, corn, beans, potatoes to the breeding pigs or they'll go sterile. You only feed them to the young stock that you're trying to make them fat to get to market, because you're selling your pigs by the pound, not by the health, but by pound. He says, and I can't make little babies if my pigs are sterile. And so our biology is similar to a swine. We have a similar digestive tract. We have a similar, they're taking kidneys out of pigs and putting them on people. They're taking eyeballs out of pigs. It's like the interchangeable kind of to some extent. So if my cousin and my family has been doing this the way, why is this knowledge not available now today? Well, if you know that you don't feed certain things to certain animals, if you want them to live healthy and be reproducing, well, it's the same today. We're eating things that are causing digestive problems, sterility. Sterility, or the amount of infertility today is high.
Yeah.
It's insane. And this goes into depression. This goes into digestive problems. This goes into everything's related here. In my world, it is.
Yeah.
And so just by cutting the grains, nuts, and seeds out, boom, just on that level alone, just because they're not digestible. And then you can track, for instance, diabetes. Diabetes is a carbohydrate-based disease, an insoluble fiber disease for the most part.
Oh, I see.
I mean, even the academia says a baked potato is about the same as eating a spoon of sugar. It does the same thing for your blood sugar, but they don't talk about whole grain, flaxseed, oatmeal, rye, barley, spelt. All this stuff does the same thing, but
Right.
they don't make the distinct. They keep potatoes out over here, but then whole grain.
Oh my goodness, our show has come to an end. Well, that was very fast.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week, Dr. Wil Spencer. You can learn more about Wil at bodyelectrician.com, and we will see you here at the Just Bernard Show next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bernard.